Hey everyone, welcome back to Breakthrough Innovation, where we uncover what it really takes to lead change, create value, and build what's next. I'm JL Heather. Normally, my co host Preston Chandler here is with me, but couldn't make it today. But together, we lead Centered, a firm that helps organizations navigate complexity, spark creativity, and unlock the full potential of their teams through innovation, coaching, and strategy. And I usually just gloss over that word potential, but I think it's going to be really relevant today because our guest is a true pioneer in performance transformation in the boardroom, on the battlefield, and beyond. I'm thrilled to welcome Chris Major, a founder and CEO of the Human Potential Project and creator of the Red Line Framework. Chris started his journey working with elite athletes and special forces units to decode the core of winning performance. He's since applied that insight to corporate giants like Microsoft, Intel, and Capital One, leading billion-dollar transformation efforts that delivered results most only dream about. Now, Chris is leading a new wave of disruption, integrating AI with human development to reimagine what leadership, strategy, and execution can look like in the age of intelligent technology. He's an Amazon best-selling author, a social innovator, and someone who spent decades helping people unlock potential most didn't know they had. Chris, I'm incredibly excited about this conversation. I'm fascinated by the concept of potential and what we can do to reach our own potential. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks very much. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So you've worked with athletes, Navy SEALs, Fortune 100 executives. Pretty much you've run the gambit. Where did the journey begin for you? And what was that moment, that aha moment that really started to connect performance and leadership?
Oh boy. So I have a very strange creation story for sure. So when I was in college, I was a rugby player. I was
Mm,
captain of the rugby team. I played first division for 12 years. And every year there was this giant invitation only elite tournament down in Monterey, California. And one year, my team and I were going. I get to the airport and I realized I'd forgotten the book that I was reading. I didn't have anything to do on the airplane. And I'm not one of these guys who can stare out the window for 3 hours or read the in-flight magazine 12 times. So, hey, I'm a bright guy. Let's go get another book, right? So
right.
I went to the airport bookstore. You've been there, the wall of books and the
Oh,
whole
yeah.
thing. Well, this is going to sound strange, but I had a mystical experience in the airport bookstore. Uh, no kidding. Now, bear in mind that in time, this is like 1980, right?
Yeah.
So I'm staring at the wall of books, and literally all of a sudden, this voice in my head is telling me that I've got to get this. I didn't even see it. Like there's some book up here, you have to go get it. And I'm looking around because I'm thinking, like, who's talking to me? What's going on here? I wasn't used to voices in my head. So I went and got this book. It was called The Ultimate Athlete by a guy named George Leonard, whom I'd never heard of. And I said, okay, well, great. What a perfect title. I'm on my way to do something athletic. No doubt I'll learn
Yeah.
something. Got the book, read it, and I was just like going, holy wow. I don't understand half of what this guy's talking about. He's talking about intentionality and synchronicity and some Japanese energy called ki and a martial art called aikido that I'd never heard of and so forth and so on. But I was left with, I don't understand this, but I like it.
Yeah.
And it resonated with me. So shortly after that, I retired from playing rugby, took up the study of Aikido, and I met a guy there who was a sports psychologist. Now, in time, it's in 1981, 80 to 82, when sports psychology was seen as something akin to voodoo or black magic, right?
Yeah.
And I was fascinated by this guy because he had sciencey sounding explanations for experiences that I had had and just written off as too many bangs on the head or flashbacks to the 60s. So yeah, we got to be buddies and didn't know it was impossible and started a company. And our
Yeah.
original mission was real simple. We were going to work exclusively with athletes. And what we wanted to do was isolate and reproduce in others the elements that led to consistent winning performance. So my creation came from a mystical voice in my head, pointing me in a completely new and different life directions. And just to close the loop on that, 2 years after that, George Leonard, the author, was a mentor. He used to come and stay at my house,
Oh, wow.
right? All right. A couple of the guys that were in the book were working for me as we're doing a special forces project. And this came to be like just a central part of everything that we do.
Wow. I've gotta ask, do you still hear the voices, or was it just no, I'm sorry. It's
Well,
interesting, though.
they're different ones, you know,
That's fair.
there's the usual chatter, you know, "What the hell are you doing?" But no, this was a different this one's different. I haven't heard that one since.
Mhm. Fair enough. I am curious, though. It's this idea of human potential that I think you say those 2 words together, and
Uh,
everyone gets the feeling that they know what you mean. They know what human potential is, but I'm not sure that's really true. So, what do you mean when you're talking about human potential, and how do we know we're even getting close to reaching it?
well, that's a really good question, and to be frank about it, no one, including me, has got a really precise answer.
Right,
So, for me, it's a fundamental belief that we each have a much greater capacity to be, do, have more than what we've got right now. Now, is there a limit to that? Well, in the physical realm, yeah, we have limitations of the human body, right?
right,
But outside of that, I don't think so. We haven't come close. Every time we think we've kind of gotten to the end point of something, you know, a whole new realm opens up. And
right.
that to me is what the game is all about, is continuing to be willing to push, to be open, and to learn. And that's really kind of the challenge for us, particularly in our society today.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting to me, like, you're talking about it as a little bit of a separate thing between, like, what you can physically do and what you can mentally do.
Yeah.
I read this book long, long time ago. I can't remember what it's called, but they talked about a study with parole judges. I think it was in Israel, but I'm not positive on that. And what they were looking at was how could they best predict who would get parole and who
Uh-huh.
wouldn't. And what they found was well, here, I'll ask you, what do you think the number one predictor was of someone getting parole?
Paroled. Wow. Well, this is a realm that I'm not trafficked in. I would have to kind of go with, you know, presentation, mood, the way that people looked.
Yeah. It actually had to do with how recently the judges had eaten.
Perfect. There you go.
And what the author, the tie they were making was there's this idea that willpower is a non-physical thing.
Uh-huh.
The reality being that it is very much tied to your glucose levels,
Yeah.
how much,
Biochemical.
yeah.
Right.
So when you talk about this separation of physical and non-physical human potential, and one being limitless and the other being limited, I struggle with that a little bit because in my mind, I feel like there really isn't that separation, that there have to be some limits. So I'm
Well,
curious.
there's definitely a unity here, right? And part of the work we do is what we call somatic work.
Mhm,
Somatic is unified mind and body.
right,
Now, that said, I can have all the willpower in the world, and I don't have a 42-inch vertical jump. So I can will myself, and I can intend, and I can visualize, and I can self-talk myself seemingly to death, and I'm not going to get
right,
much higher. Right? There's just limitations of that. That's what I'm talking about. Now, but that's a very tiny, that's a finite world there. The
right,
infinite world is on the other side of where's that unity come together. So where can I be my best at any number of things? And part of the challenge for us is if I want to develop mastery in anything, doesn't matter what it is, you know, whether it's physics or running, right? It takes a dedication of time. And pretty much to be a master in one thing precludes you getting particularly adept at most anything else because it requires
the
that much of a
focus,
focus,
yeah,
right? So, you know, you see my master martial arts teachers, you know, they're not really good at, right? That doesn't mean they know anything about bookkeeping or, you know, or anything else.
right,
But in that domain, they've developed, we can't say all of, but certainly getting close to the end point of their particular set of potentials.
yeah. And then so I think, like you mentioned, like physics versus martial arts. I have about 15-ish years of experience in martial arts back when my back and hips could take that.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like there's actually parallels there that most people don't really think about in the way you learn those new skills. When you talk about this potential, you made the comparison running and physics, martial arts and physics. H- How does the learning differ in those two situations? Like you hear things like Malcolm Gladwell's, I think it is 10,000 hours
Yeah.
and things like that. Like how does learning what role does learning play, and how does it work for realizing your potential?
Well, it's essentially the key to everything. So here's our take on this. Now, for the most part, we as a society have been sold a bill of goods about learning. We think learning is the acquisition of information, theories, models, beliefs, and ideas, all for the sake of gaining understanding, because to understand is to know, and knowing is the holy grail. Now, that might work in an academic world, but that's about it.
Right.
Now, in our work, our product is what we call embodied competence. Embodied means you can take some new action without having to stop, think about it, or look it up in some book. It's part of your repertoire for
Right.
dealing with the world. And competence is simply the capacity to consistently produce the desired result. So everybody can kind of get that. Here's the part they have trouble with. And that is that while your mind understands, and understanding can in fact occur in an instant, in the end, it's your body that learns. Your mind understands, but it's your body that learns. And the body only learns one way, and that's through practice. No amount of understanding ever produced competence in anything. So if I'm a physicist, I didn't get to be a world class physicist by reading a book. They studied for
Right.
years, years, and years. And, you know, pick any obviously with athletes that it's obvious that you get there by practice and practice and practice, and it's to me kind of you know slightly stupid and borderline criminal that in business we do just the opposite.
Right.
See, if I'm an elite athlete, the further along I progress in my athletic career, the more interaction I have with the coach and the
The
higher the
better.
quality of coaching. In
Yeah.
business, we start off and then it's almost like you're embarrassed to have a coach, or there's something wrong that you need a
It's
coach,
almost a
as opposed to
punishment.
yeah, exactly. And it should be just the opposite of that. Why
Right.
would we treat, senior executives who are responsible for the well-being of thousands of families any different than, a guy shooting a basketball, for God's sake?
Right. No, I love that. I think one of the things I always try and stress with my kids is they hear over and over, practice makes perfect. And I
Uh-huh.
tell them, no, that's absolutely wrong. Practice makes permanent. Right. So the way you practice matters. But I agree. I think we have this view of the world that says if you don't have the answer, then you are at fault.
Yeah,
If you don't know
exactly right.
how, that's your deficiency. You should have learned that. And I think honestly, the most effective, successful people I know have benefited from coaching either very like clear, like you are being
Huh?
coached by a coach, or a little less clear, like you had a great boss who coached you really well and taught you. And those are the
Mhm.
people who rise to the top. So it always surprises me when anyone shows resistance to that level of coaching.
Well, yeah, well, but you kinda said it. The business game is set up such that if I'm I got promoted to a manager based on what I know, not what I
Yeah.
don't know,
Right.
you know? And so we almost live in this story of, I've gotta pretend, and that
Oh,
too
yeah.
often, that's what happens. And, well, I
Yeah.
pretend that I know, then we make some big breakdown, and it's like, well, that could easily have been avoided or
Yeah.
precluded, but we have got a very dangerous mindset about all that stuff right now.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
coach a lot of executives, a lot of leaders. I don't know that I've coached one that doesn't have some level of imposter syndrome, like some feeling. And maybe the only ones that I've coached that don't have that are maybe suffering from a severe lack of empathy or self-awareness. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think that that's a real thing. Have you ever heard of the Peter Principle?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we promote people to their highest level of incompetence because we don't ever help them
Yeah,
realize
exactly
potential
right.
beyond that.
Exactly right. But then if you look at, elite athletes, they spend more time practicing and working with coach than they do playing the game.
Right. Oh, yeah.
But somehow we think it's different over here. No, it's not.
Yeah. It's no wonder burnout is such a problem.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So maybe like as we approach the end of the time together here, what advice would you give to leaders or teams or just really anyone, I guess, who feels like they're stuck on that journey of pursuing their potential?
Well, it's not, rocket science. You have to ask for help, period. Yeah, everybody, well, I'll learn it on my own. No, no, it's like if you want to improve your golf game, right? Everybody said, I ask this question to executives all the time. So you say you want to get really much better at golf. What are you going to do? Well, I'm going to go to the range and practice. Okay. So you're going to go practice being bad. What? Well, you already said that you need to get much better. So when you go to the range of practice, all you're doing is more deeply ingraining what you already know how to do, which you have said is insufficient. So you're going to get really good at being bad. Yeah, I know you didn't think of it that way. So if you're committed to getting better, you're going to get a coach, right? And you're going to fall into a mindset, and this is difficult for being a beginner, right? A beginner is a person who makes all three of the following declarations. I see there's some realm in which I'm not competent or not competent enough, and I'm committed to learn. Two, I'm going to authorize someone to coach me. So if you actually go out and hire a coach, you're not going to talk to the coach and tell him, "Oh, I don't really need you. You know, I'm really cool. I got it all nailed." No, that's counterproductive. And three, and this is the hard part for adults. This is why most adults never learn anything. Is I'm going to be at peace with being a beginner. Because it's being a beginner where you make all the stupid mistakes, right? You know, my tennis serve looks more like a baseball home run. Oh, it's up and over the 400-foot fence, right? You know, the beginner skiers, you know, well, you cross your tips, you're on your face or your ass all day. That's how it gets better,
Yep.
right? It's how it gets better. And over time, we learn, and everybody thinks, well, there's this learning curve. No, there's not. It's a learning stair step.
Right.
Well, you plateau, you get frustrated, and then just when you're out, screw it, bump up.
Yep.
But you got to keep there with the coach. So I'll leave you with this thought about this. So back to my golf example. So you got a coach, right? So you go to the range, coach is standing there, and she says, "Okay, let me see you take some shots." So boom, 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 boom. She says, "Okay, move your hands a little bit, stand up a little straighter, do this with your feet. Now take some shots." What happens to those next few shots? They're complete crap. Why? Well, it's awkward. It's uncomfortable. It's new. And the little voice, speaking of voices in your head, is whining. I don't like this. Yeah. Everybody's looking at me. They think I'm a dork. Well, you know, right this moment you are. So deal with it. If the coach wasn't standing right there, what would you and 99.9% of population do? Go right back to doing it the way you did because that was more comfortable.
Yep.
All right. And that's the challenge. You've got to be willing to be uncomfortable. Most adults aren't. We're much more invested in being cool than being great.
Yeah. I like that line. We're more invested in being cool than being great. Mm. No, that's a great way to end it, Chris. I think you've given me a lot to think about. I think what you're doing is really important. If someone wants help reaching their potential or knows someone who might need your help,
Uh-huh.
what's the best way for them to reach out?
Well, smoke signals are tough out here in Seattle. So we've developed this whole cool new thing called the internet. And you can get on humanpotentialproject.com, find me there, or simply chrismajor.com. I do my kind of speaking and that sort of stuff. Either of those work. You can jump on Amazon and get a copy of my book, The Power to Transform. We used to sell them ourselves off the website, but you know, Amazon can do it cheaper and faster. So,
Right.
you know, go for it. And you know, somewhere in that mix is there's a way that'll work. And if you really want to reach me, you can do it that way.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Chris, thank you so much. For everyone else who's listened all the way to the end with us while you're down there giving that 5-star rating and leaving a really kind comment. I think if while you're leaving that comment, tell us a little bit about what you're doing to reach your potential. I'd love to hear about it and see if there's something unique that you're doing that maybe others could learn from. And then lastly, if you know someone who's struggling, who could benefit from Chris's insights, share this episode with them, share the knowledge. And with that said, Chris, thank you again so much. This was a wonderful conversation. Everyone else, we'll see you next time on Breakthrough Innovation.